So part of the same validation studies by the LAPD?
Yes.
And in particular, with regard to this sample, this is the fourth of 5 errors that you have testified to previously?
Correct.
In particular, the analyst was Aaron Riley,
Yes.
and the confirming analyst was Colin Yamauchi,
Yes.
so their roles have basically reversed.
Yes.
With regard to this sample, you identified an error with regard to which individual strip or sample?
Item 21-1, which is number 3.
So the third column, I'm sorry, third row down.
Third row down.
That is labeled under description. It looks like mock vag swab number 1,
Correct.
and then SP in parentheses for sperm.
Yes.
And then the sample below that, would that then be also the E cell or victim cell portion of the same vaginal swab?
It is.
Now, off to the right of item number 3, that is the third item down, the results are written in 1.2, 4, correct?
Correct.
Incidentally, is this the same sample that was run previously in what you have described as error number 3?
It's the same sexual assault standard, yes.
And without belaboring the point, you don't disagree with the particular types noted by the analysts, do
No,
you?
I don't.
In fact, you agree with them,
I do.
that they were called appropriately in terms of the types present.
Correct.
And your opinion about this being error, would it be based on the exact same reasons that you gave with respect to the previous hybridization record?
That's correct.
And in your view, this then constitutes the fourth of 5 errors.
That's correct.
And again, just to be clear, this particular result of 1.2, 4, again, is consistent with the victim in both portions.
That's correct.
And in fact, would your answers be the same, that such an occurrence is not unexpected with a sexual assault sample in actual casework?
That the victim's DNA would be found in that fraction, that's not uncommon.
And in fact, an experienced analyst would not be surprised by that.
Correct.
Dr. Gerdes, with respect to both this run and the previous error that you've described, you're not offering the opinion that these were called wrong by the analysts, are you?
No, I'm not.
You're just you are offering the opinion that errors were committed because the analyst didn't detect what you feel should have been detected.
That's correct.
Have you reviewed any notes about what was observed in terms of any steps prior to typing these samples?
I've read testimony or heard testimony, read testimony, I believe, that these were observed microscopically to confirm sperm was there.
And with respect to the confirmation of sperm, does an experienced analyst always obtain a result for those sperm just because they're observed?
They should.
Is it your testimony that because sperm are observed, there should be a PCR DQ alpha result for that sperm?
That they should obtain, they should find that DNA.
Isn't it correct that there are levels of sperm that may not be detected by the DQ alpha system when using the appropriate number of cycles?
There are levels below that, but if they observe sperm, they should not be at that level.
If there is observed sperm, can't there be a low number of sperm not detectable?
If they observe sperm, there's an adequate amount.
Is it your testimony that if there's sperm seen, there should be a result up there?
Yes.
And it's based on that testimony that you offer the opinion this was a fourth error?
Based on that, and also if you look at the time frame around this period, there's a 4 allele that's circulating through the lab, which in my opinion,
I'm sorry,
on the
objection,
context,
non-responsive, move to
Sustained.
strike. All right, Your Honor, I would ask to have one final photograph marked, if I may.
Yes.
.563,
Yes.
showing you Dr. Gerdes another similar photo. Does that appear familiar?
Yes,
And is that labeled hybridization 199?
that's correct.
And you have a copy of that?
I do.
Your Honor, may I display this? Dr. Gerdes, does this strip reflect the final error that you described in your testimony yesterday?
Yes,
First of all, in terms of the date is May 25, 94?
correct.
The analyst is whom?
Harry Clan,
HK.
HK.
And this particular run consists of what?
A series of hairs that were analyzed, and they're reference hairs.
Now, by reference hairs, what do you mean?
They're from known individuals at the laboratory, so they are just presumably cleanly picked out of a person's head and then run.
The particular error that you've identified relates to what sample?
It's the fifth lane down.
Which is labeled under item number, there's -10,
Correct. And then number 27, S.
S. So this would be, well, let's just start off to the far left. It's actually number 5, as written in the far left-hand column.
Correct.
And then it's number 5 under tube number,
Correct.
and then -10
Correct.
under item number. I just want to make sure we're clear on which row.
Correct.
And then it's labeled number 27S.
Correct.
That is what type of sample?
That's a hair shaft from one of these references.
Is it the case that that's a hair shaft from the named, or what appears to be the first name of a person immediately above that sample?
That's correct.
What looks like Jerry B?
Yeah, it also says number 27 before that, so that's
Okay.
what you go by.
Now that sample above the one that we're interested in that says number 27 Jerry B, is that
Correct.
the root of that hair shaft?
It is.
The sample that you have offered the opinion is an error relates to the shaft itself, correct?
Correct.
As far as the root of that hair is concerned, was that correctly called?
Yes.
Where is the DNA in a hair?
It's found in the root.
It's found in the root only, isn't it?
That's correct.
Can hair shafts be typed for DNA?
Hair shafts are generally considered to be substrate controls if they're at a crime scene. They should not have DNA.
In other words, if a hair were sterilely removed from a person's hair and maintained in an absolute sterile condition and then typed using this system, there would be no DNA result, correct?
Correct.
As far as the root hair, and I'm talking about one above the sample that we're interested in, that typed as the same type as Jerry B, correct?
Correct.
Which is a 2,3.
Correct.
The hair shaft that you have offered the opinion is an error. Is it correct that the 1.2 allele was noted by the analyst?
Yes.
And there was no confirming analyst in this instance? At least none noted?
None noted.
The 2 allele was noted on the shaft.
Yes.
A week 3 was noted on the shaft.
Yes.
And is it the case that the week 3 is noted to be approximately the same intensity as the C dot?
Correct.
You have offered the opinion that that result is incorrect. Is that right?
That's correct.
As far as the presence of those alleles, you don't have any, or you're not rendering any conclusion that the alleles aren't present, are you?
No.
As far as a hair shaft, isn't it correct that hair shafts, in fact, can have DNA on them?
If it's from a contaminant or from a crime scene, in this case it's from a contaminant, and the significant aspect of this particular item is that the 1.2 and 2 are the analyst is recording this according to intensity, are recorded as the type with this week 3, so that is an incorrect type.
Well, isn't it the case there shouldn't be any type on a hair shaft if it's sterilely collected and sterilely maintained?
That's true.
Hairs are in the real world, aren't they?
Yes, but generally on reference hairs, that's why you do these reference hairs. The shafts are clean.
If somebody else plucked a hair out, had trouble plucking it out or whatever, or had to deal with the hair manually, if enough of that went on, couldn't you detect the DNA of the person who pulled the hair?
It certainly is possible that in the manipulation of that item in the LAPD, by the way they manipulated it, they introduced foreign DNA there.
The fact that a hair shaft has DNA on it, that's not an error, is it?
In this particular case, I've considered this an error because on reference hairs in particular, occasionally you will find a small amount of DNA on the shaft. Most likely that DNA is going to be the same type as the root. And the explanation for that is when you pull the hair out, there may be some epithelial cells that come across from that individual that would type. But you generally do not find any DNA there. And if you do find DNA there, it should match the person that hair came from. In this case, it doesn't. There's a 1.2 that's coming from somewhere else.
Dr. Gerdes, how many cases have you consulted with a defense attorney on that have involved hairs?
Probably maybe 20-25% of the cases I've done,
So about
So-
7 or 8?
something like that.
In those cases, did all the hair shafts type with no results on them?
Those were hairs that came from crime scenes, and it's not unusual to find either both the root and the shaft with the same type or foreign DNAs on those.
So it's your complaint and it's your opinion that this is an error because this is a hair shaft and we know who it came from.
That's not my complaint. I mean, it's an error because there's a 1.2 that doesn't make sense on a reference hair. If you look at reference hairs that are generally run in labs that use these kinds of standards, if you find any DNA, it's the type of the individual. You don't find DNA from someone else there, unless it's from a crime scene or it was collected somewhere where you might anticipate that to happen.
Is it your testimony, Dr. Gerdes, that an experienced DNA analyst would, if obtaining a result on a hair shaft, that necessarily is an error if it's from a known person?
This should be typing as a 2.3. It types as a 1.22.
Objection non-responsive, Your Honor.
Overruled. Ask the question again.
Dr. Gerdes, is it your testimony that an experienced forensic analyst who obtains a result such as this on a hair shaft from a known person would make a mistake in seeing that result?
Overruled.
That's my testimony based on the fact that this should be a 2.3 hair because this is a reference sample.
Dr. Gerdes, there shouldn't be anything on it unless it was collected and kept in a sterile fashion, correct?
This is a typing error because of the fact that there's the introduction of a contaminant which creates the wrong dot intensities of the 1.22.
You're calling this a typing error?
Yes.
In other words, those alleles aren't there.
No, they're there, but they're there because of introduced contamination.
The 5 errors that you have discussed in your testimony for the last hour, perhaps, in your opinion, those are all errors by the Los Angeles Police Department laboratory?
They are.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the evening. Doctor, you can step down. Please remember all my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. Don't communicate with anybody with regard to the case. As far as the jury is concerned, we'll stand in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. All right, you all have a pleasant evening. See you tomorrow.